everybody out there, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan. If you are new here, I'm a certified holistic nutritionist, and in today's video I'm going to be talking all about natural birth control, specifically fertility awareness and how I track my cycle. This video is designed to educate you about fertility awareness and how we can better understand our bodies and our cycles, but all forms of birth control have advantages and disadvantages, and it's ultimately up to you to choose what makes you feel most comfortable. I won't be getting into the details of hormonal birth control or why I no longer take it or anything like that in this video, but if you do want to learn more about that and about the pill, I have a blog post that I will leave linked below. I'm also going to be leaving all kinds of resources in the description box below, as well as a full blog post that I have written up that goes into everything that I am talking about today as well. So make sure that you check out the description box to get more info after this video. So fertility awareness is the practice of using different kinds of methods to help us to detect different day-to-day physiological changes that occur throughout our body so that we can determine when we are fertile and when we are not fertile. So it's not just one straightforward method that we're using, it's actually a combination of different methods that used together. Fertility awareness is used to prevent pregnancy as well as to plan for pregnancy too, and I do want to mention that it's not to be confused with the rhythm method. Those two terms often get mixed up, but they're actually very, very different. I will be talking later on in this video about the rhythm method. So to properly understand fertility awareness, we first have to have a basic understanding of how our cycles work. An average cycle lasts anywhere from 25 to 35 days or so, and it consists of three specific phases: the follicular phase, ovulation, and the luteal phase. So the first day of your period is the start of the follicular phase, where estrogen gradually increases up until ovulation, which is our second phase. During ovulation, estrogen is at its highest, as well as a spike in another hormone called luteinizing hormone. And together these hormones help to prepare the uterine lining for pregnancy, helps to thicken the uterine lining. We also start to produce a ton of a very specific kind of cervical mucus around this time, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. During ovulation, basically an egg is released from the ovary, travels down the fallopian tube, and it's ready to be fertilized or to die. Now, what I want to point out here is that an egg is really only viable or able to be fertilized for about 24 hours in an entire cycle. However, because sperm can live inside of the vagina for up to 5 days or so, we can have a fertile window of anywhere from 5 to 7 days or so. So usually about 25% of your cycle is considered fertile. So you really want to keep that in mind when thinking about fertility awareness. And really you want to keep in mind your unique body and your unique health status as well, because those things can all impact ovulation and our fertile windows. Everybody is a little different. So after ovulation, we enter the third phase, the luteal phase, where estrogen decreases, progesterone increases, and then once that tapers off, we enter the follicular phase again, the first day of our period, and the process starts all over again. Before I get into all of the various fertility awareness methods, I want to first emphasize the importance of barrier methods, or things like condoms, when you're choosing natural birth control, or really any form of birth control for that matter. Because with fertility awareness, we're not taking synthetic hormones that are stopping us from ovulating. We're experiencing our natural cycles each month, where we have very, very fertile days, or days when we're a little bit uncertain. And that's why things like condoms or other types of barrier methods are so important for us to keep in mind and to be using on those days where we're a little bit uncertain, or some people prefer to use them more regularly overall, regardless of the primary birth control method that's being used. So I just want to emphasize that condoms, of course, are what protect against STIs. So keep that in mind, and let's get into the fertility awareness methods. I use all of these methods. So the first method that I want to talk about is tracking your basal body temperature. Your basal body temperature is your body's temperature at rest, so before you even get up in the morning. Tracking this involves using a basal body temperature thermometer that helps you to determine your fertility status, because our temperature throughout the month fluctuates. and there's a very specific small increase in our basal body temperature after we ovulate. I have here the Daisy Fertility Tracker. This here is a very comprehensive basal body temperature thermometer. I do want to point out here though that this is not contraception, this is not birth control, it is just a fertility tracker, but it works by logging your temperature each day and days of your period when you input it and storing it in the device. I've been using this here now for about 5 months or so, and I love it. It's a fantastic tool to have, and that's why I'm so grateful that they are partnering up with me on today's video. So what I do is every morning I take my temperature before I stand up, before I even sit up. I just place it under my tongue, wait a few seconds, and then it'll light up red, green, or yellow. So red indicates that you are fertile and you should abstain from sex or use another form of birth control, like condoms, for example. Green indicates that you are not fertile, and yellow indicates that there are fluctuations or it's still learning your cycle. When you first start using the Daisy, you get quite a lot of yellow lights because it's still learning your cycle. It takes a good few months for it to understand your data. It does have a 99% accuracy though at calculating your temperature, so it's pretty darn accurate. You're also able to plug it into your phone and connect it to the app, and it'll pull up all of your daily fluctuations. So you can see here all my temperature fluctuations over the past few weeks. I also want to point out here that it's important when you're tracking your basal body temperature that you are using a specific basal body temperature thermometer, not just one that you would use for, seeing if you have a fever, because they're designed to detect very small fluctuations in your temperature. So I will leave a link below if you want to learn more about the Daisy. Their website has all kinds of information, so you can look at it below. Our cervical mucus is another particularly interesting visual tool that we can use to determine our fertility status and where we're at in our cycle. I've tracked mine for many, many years now. It's honestly become second nature to me to just kind of gauge what type of fluid I'm producing on any given day. It might sound complicated or kind of weird if you're not used to this, but you know what? It's just as simple as noticing what's on your underwear or what is on the tissue when you wipe after going to the washroom. It can sometimes be useful to feel it between your fingers so you can have a better understanding of, the exact type of fluid that you're producing. So there's a few main types of cervical mucus that we want to pay attention to. The first kind is an egg white-like consistency. So this kind of cervical mucus is slippery, it's kind of stretchy, like you could actually pull it between your fingers. It's kind of translucent in color and it resembles raw egg white. This type of mucus is one that you really want to look out for because it indicates our highest levels of fertility. You'll typically start to produce it in the few days leading up to and the day of ovulation. And the reason why this type of mucus is so slippery is because sperm love it. It helps to facilitate the entry of sperm. So it is it's prime pregnancy cervical fluid. So anytime that I notice it, I usually notice it for a few days around the middle of my cycle or so. And anytime I see it, I'm like, there it is. There, we are fertile. If you're taking hormonal birth control, you will not notice this type of fluid because you aren't ovulating. The next type of fluid is creamy or wet. This kind of cervical mucus is sort of similar to like a lotion. It might be thin or watery, and this one also tends to occur in the days leading up to ovulation, but when we're not quite fertile yet. So still kind of typically will indicate higher levels of fertility. The next kind of mucus is a sticky type of mucus. So this one can be kind of tacky if you were to feel it between your fingers. And this type of mucus generally indicates lower levels of fertility. You might notice it closer to your period or in the days kind of after your period. And lastly, we have dry days, as some people call it. So there are days during our cycle where we will produce little to no mucus really at all. And again, this will indicate typically low levels of fertility. And also, as a little side note, you're able to track your cervical fluid in the Daisy View app. You can just select which type of fluid you're producing. They kind of lay it out there for you, and it'll log it for you directly in the app. Next up is our cervical position. So our cervix, which is the opening of our uterus, actually changes angle throughout the month. Who knew? Our cervix, when we are most fertile, it tends to be higher up and a little bit softer. When we are not as fertile, it tends to be lower and firmer. So you can actually feel this with your fingers if you wanted to. You can sometimes even notice it during intercourse. But again, still a great tool that we can use to help us know where we're at during the month and during our cycle in conjunction with the other methods. And lastly, I want to talk about the calendar method. We're using a period tracker. This is also known as the rhythm method. So like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the rhythm method is often confused with fertility awareness. The two terms often get mixed up, but the rhythm method alone is quite a bit different. So you're basically looking at past cycle data to make future predictions, and you don't want to rely on this exclusively. It is not going to be quite as effective just on its own. And that's because there's so many variables that influence our cycles, from illness, traveling, stress. So you want to be making sure that you're using a calendar method or a period tracker in conjunction with everything that I am talking about today. So I personally have used the app Clue to track my period for about 6 years now. I love it. It is my favorite app. It's just great because you can also track any symptoms you're experiencing. So if you're getting cramps, you can, plug that into the app. You can track if you're having breast tenderness. If you want to track your mood, you can do that too. And of course, I plug in the days of my period. So this has been an invaluable tool for me to have a better understanding of approximately how long my cycles are on average. And I mean, I've got 6 years worth of data, so I have like a pretty good average cycle length, but it's really great to have that information about yourself because everybody's different, right? And then of course, it's a good way to have that general approximation of when your fertile window is as well. And that is it for today's video. That is everything that I wanted to cover when it comes to fertility awareness and how I track it. Leave me a comment below if you follow fertility awareness, or if you're interested in exploring it, or if you use a totally different form of birth control. Let me know in the comments below. Everybody is welcome here. And be sure to check out the description box because I've got all kinds of resources for you to check out, as well as the blog post that I mentioned that goes along with today's video. So be sure to check all that out as well, especially if you guys have any questions pertaining to the types of things that I talked about today. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all very, very soon. Bye.